All right, let's talk about three little letters that make most startup founders just groan. GRC, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. It just sounds like boring corporate baggage designed to kill your speed. But here's the thing. What if I told you that GRC isn't a roadblock at all? What if it's actually the rocket fuel you've been missing? Yeah, you heard me right. Let's get into it.
So you're probably thinking, compliance, that's a problem for later. I get it. Your head's down, you're building a product, you're chasing customers, you're just trying to keep the lights on. It totally feels like something for the big, established companies, right? Something you'll get to eventually. Well, that little word later might just be the single most dangerous assumption a startup can make.
Okay, let's follow the money, shall we? 78%. Think about that. Nearly 8 out of 10 investors say that risk management is a key factor when they're deciding to invest. And why is that? Is because they're not just betting on your cool idea, they're betting on you, on your ability to actually build a lasting company. If your GRC is a mess, it's like a giant flashing red flag that basically screams, we're not ready for the big leagues.
And these risks? Oh, they are not theoretical. Check this out. The average cost of just one data breach for a small business is nearly $4 million. That is a staggering number. And that's not just some fine you pay. No. That's the whole toxic cocktail. The hit to your reputation, customers fleeing, lawyers' bills piling up. I mean, for most startups, that's not a setback. That's game over. Lights out.
Still thinking, it won't happen to us. Well, let's look at the odds. 55%. More than half of all startups got hit with a cyber attack just last year alone. The threat isn't some distant possibility. It's real, it's happening right now, and yeah, they are absolutely targeting companies just like yours.
So all of this leads to a really powerful idea called compliance debt. You know how technical debt works? This is the same thing, but for rules and security. Every time you say we'll do it later, you're taking out a loan. Every security corner you cut, every policy you don't write, that's debt. And trust me, the interest on that debt is absolutely brutal. It's paid in sleepless nights, frantic last-minute fixes, lost enterprise deals, and maybe even crippling fines.
So how do you avoid getting buried under all that debt? Well, the good news is you don't have to boil the ocean. The secret is to treat GRC like you treat your product. You scale it. It grows with you. It's a journey, not some massive one-time project. So let's pull up the roadmap and see what that journey looks like.
It's actually super simple. We can break it down into 3 stages that everyone can understand: crawl, walk, and run. Each stage has its own game plan, its own priorities, and it's all tailored to where your company is right now. Look, if you're just 2 people in a garage, you do not need a GRC program built for a Fortune 500 company. You just need to learn how to crawl.
So let's start right at the beginning, the crawl phase. Think of this as your minimal viable compliance. Just like a minimal viable product, right? It's all about doing the absolute essentials, the simple, foundational things that give you the most protection for the least amount of effort, stuff that won't slow you down one bit.
I know what this stage feels like. Your entire universe is one thing, and one thing only: product market fit. That's it. You're building, you're iterating, you're just trying to survive and find those first few customers who love what you do. So the goal here is not to go get a bunch of fancy certifications. Nope. It's just to put the absolute bare minimum, non-negotiable protections in place.
And what does that actually look like? It's way easier than you think. Seriously. First, just turn on multi-factor authentication. Everywhere. It's free and it's probably the single best thing you can do for security. Second, write a basic privacy policy. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get something down. Third, make sure you're using secure cloud storage, not, some random personal Dropbox account. And finally, and this is key, just start to understand the rules for your industry. What are the big regulations you might run into later? Just get them on your radar.
And this slide really drives that point home. You don't need to be a lawyer. You just need to know the rules of the playground you're in, right? If you're building a fintech app, you got to know what PCI DSS. If you're in healthcare, HIPAA is table stakes. And for pretty much any B2B SaaS company, words like SOC 2 and GDPR are going to come up fast. At this stage, just knowing they exist is half the battle.
Okay, deep breath. You've made it through the crawl phase. You survived. Now, you're starting to walk. And this is where things get really exciting. But honestly, it's also where things get dangerous. This is what we call the scaling trap. It's that point where all the "we'll figure it out as we go" stuff starts to completely fall apart. And that compliance that we talked about, it can pile up scary fast. So you've got real customers now. You're hiring people. You have actual traction. It's amazing. But those spreadsheets and random shared Google Docs that held everything together, yeah, they're not holding up so well anymore. They're becoming a liability. What was scrappy and smart for a team of 5 is just pure chaos for a team of 50. It's time to formalize.
So what does formalizing even mean? Well, here are the big 4 steps. 1, you do your first real risk assessment. Just sit down and ask, what are the biggest things that could blow up our company? 2, you pick a security framework, like a SOC 2 or an ISO 27001. Think of it like a blueprint for building a secure house. You just follow the instructions. 3, you start automating everything you can. And 4, you write down an incident response plan. Because let's be real, it's not a matter of if something goes wrong, it's a matter of when.
And that automation piece is your secret weapon, especially when your team is lean. Seriously, think about it. Instead of some poor soul spending a week every quarter manually taking screenshots to prove you're compliant, you have a tool that just does it 24/7. It's constantly checking your systems. It turns GRC from the stressful periodic fire drill into just a quiet background process. It lets a tiny team have the security posture of a much bigger company.
Okay, so up until now, we've basically been talking about GRC as a shield, right? It's defense, it's about protecting yourself. But now it's time to flip the script entirely. Because once you get to the run phase, that shield, it transforms into a sword. It's no longer just defense, it becomes a genuine superpower, a massive competitive advantage.
It really comes down to 2 completely different mindsets. You've got the old way of thinking. GRC is a cost center. It's red tape, it's a bureaucratic anchor that slows you down. And then there's the smart way, the modern view. The GRC is actually a growth enabler. It's a strategic key that builds trust and unlocks doors you couldn't even knock on before.
But how does that work in the real world? It's actually pretty straightforward. That SOC2 report you worked for, it's not just a piece of paper. It's a golden ticket that lets you skip the 6-month security questionnaire with that massive enterprise client you've been chasing. It tells investors you're not playing around. You're ready to scale responsibly. It makes you look like the professional in a room full of amateurs. It's not a brake pedal. It's a turbo button.
And look, you don't have to take my word for it. The data speaks for itself. A whopping 80% of customers say they are more likely to buy from a company they trust to protect their data. 80%. That's not a niche market. That's almost everyone. Trust isn't some fluffy, nice-to-have feeling anymore. It is a direct, measurable driver of your revenue, period.
So let's wrap it up with this. I want you to take a hard look at your own startup right now, today. Ask yourself this one simple question. Is your GRC strategy a bottleneck, or is it your next secret weapon? Is it a roadblock, or is it rocket fuel? The choice is totally up to you.